Hello, this is Pastor Riley Peterson, and this is Growing in Faith, a series where we take the Bible studies and bring it to you, bring it to your homes, wherever you're at, to watch and learn the different topics that we're discussing in Genesis, in our Bible studies. And this week is Genesis chapter 3. In this story, we get to hear of the first sin. Eve eating the apple, being tempted by the serpent. First, one thing, I said apple, it was a slip of the tongue. It never actually says what fruit there is. When they realize they're naked, they use fig leaves. But in Brazil, the forbidden fruit's actually a banana. It's cultural, it's whatever fruit you envision. But I grew up in a town with an orchard, and honestly, I grew up in America, so I think apple when I think of the forbidden fruit. Some things interesting to note, and I really want you to read through this. Notice Adam wasn't off far away on the other side of the Garden of Eden when the serpent was talking to Eve. He was actually right there with her. It just says that the woman turned to the man and gave him, and he bit it. And yet when God meets them, what does Adam do? What does the man do? He plays the blame game. Oh, well, she made me do it, right? Well, they were both listening to the serpent speak. They both could hear him saying, oh, you will be like God if you have this. Well, so he blames Eve, and Eve blames the serpent, and then God says, you guys are all wrong. Each get their own curse and pangs. But maybe there's a bigger image there. They eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. In this story of old that the ancient Israelites wrote, do you think they knew what they were saying? It's not just the knowledge of evil. It's not just the knowledge of good, but the knowledge of good and evil. Entered here is the introduction of the fact that we as humans can know and learn what good and evil is, but that doesn't always mean that we don't do the wrong thing when we shouldn't, right? So we know when we're being bad. We know when we're doing the wrong things. Also, with the introduction of knowledge, good and evil, this is where the concept of shame comes in. Vulnerability, uncomfortableness. Before this, Adam and Eve were just servants of God, doing what God had commanded, naming the animals, taking care of the land, eating from anything, even the tree of life. And yet, in wanting to be like God, in wanting to be closer and to have some of the responsibilities that God is, instead we get the story of the human condition. This human condition that says we are born with an inability to have faith. We are born without faith in God. And what I mean by that is, as babies, we don't have the capability to actually have faith in God. It's our parents that grow up there. It's our church learning. That's when we learn to know about God. The point of baptism is to welcome someone into God's forgiveness, and then for the parents to raise that child up so that at confirmation they can affirm that baptism. That's what original sin is. And so in this chapter 3, it's more than just a story about an apple and a snake and a woman and a man. It tells a bigger story about the circle of shame that we have and how that's built into us from the very beginning. It talks to us about faith. It talks to us about what it means to not want to be around other people because you're worried about what they would think. That's why they got away from God, right? They hid themselves from God because they were naked. They didn't know nakedness until they learned of good and evil. Perhaps at one point they were more like children who would more than be happy to run around butt naked and smile and laugh and giggle. I know my son certainly does that from time to time. So what are the ways in which the human condition, or should I say our imperfection, shine through you? Now there is a message of grace. God said, if you eat of this tree, you will die. But he doesn't kill Adam and Eve. He banishes them. But he lets them live. He lets them keep living. This continues God's constant relationship, his call for us to do as we should, And when we fail, God meets us with patience and forgiveness. So how does God need to be patient with you? How might you need to be patient with yourself? I want you to think about that this week. This is Pastor Reed with Growing in Faith, talking about Genesis chapter 3. Take care.